to our Bible study where we are looking at the liturgy, both in how we participate in Sunday worship, but also in how we live out our liturgical practices in our lives. So just to review, every weekend we gather and we go through a worship service. Oftentimes, it's one of the divine services found in the LSB. These rites and ceremonies and practices that we do form us for the habits of our daily Christian life. And so by looking at these practices on Sunday, we can also start to unlock and look at how we can live out these practices every single day of the week. So today, we're moving on to a part of our worship service that is near and dear to me, the Introit. Here at Holy Cross, I am often the one that ends up leading the congregation in singing the Introit. Perhaps you've heard it before. It sounds something like this. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. Perhaps you've wondered where this comes from and why we do this. Like a lot of our worship practices, this actually dates back to Pope Gregory, and it has an interesting and perhaps unexpected origin. See, nowadays, when you come to worship in church, you come in, you sit in your pew, you're socially distanced from everyone right now, and you wait for the service to start, usually with some music at the beginning, but then the pastor will get up, make a few announcements, and we'll get going. Well, this wasn't actually how church always worked. In fact, oftentimes it used to be a long, long time ago that people would wait outside of the sanctuary and would not enter into the sanctuary until the Introit. They would do all of those introductory rites, the invocation, the confession, absolution. Those would happen outside of the sanctuary before you went into that room, or even that building. And the idea was that you would not enter into this space until you had been made ready to do so. It also had some very practical purposes in the sense that oftentimes you would be waiting for the pastor to show up. And while you were waiting, you would sing hymns and spiritual songs. And the spiritual songs of the Bible are the Psalms, Psalm, found in the middle of most of your modern Bibles. The Psalms are poetry that were really mostly designed to be sung and not read. And so out of this practical need to enter into the sanctuary and looking for something to fill that space, to fill that entering action, the Introit was born. The Introit just means to enter into. And while the congregation was entering into the sanctuary, they would sing the spiritual songs of the church, which are the Psalms. We continue this practice today, even though we don't enter into the church. The practical reason that this exists is no longer here. But because of the church building this habit, it remained even after the practical purpose disappeared. A meaning developed from it. Now you'll notice oftentimes when the Introit is being sung, that's when the pastor will enter into the chancel. The pastor will be outside the chancel for the invocation, for the confession and absolution, and they will enter into that chancel during the Introit. In this way, it is kind of symbolized that the congregation itself is entering into the presence of God. So how does this practice help prepare us for daily life? Well, one of the things that I think is really cool is that it gives us an opportunity to actually sing the Psalms and not just to read them. Oftentimes, as I demonstrated earlier, here at Holy Cross, it will follow that melody. But there's tons of other melodies and options out there that provide a way for us to reclaim these as songs. After all, as I'm sure that you know, there's a big difference between saying something and singing and hearing something. It sticks in our brain a little bit differently. It actually activates different parts in there, and it helps us remember and kind of live the content a little bit better. I mean, how many times have you found yourself humming a song on the way home from work or as you're doing chores around the house without even realizing it? So this is a cool way to actually treat the Psalms like they were meant to be treated, as songs. So that's one way. I think another way that this can really play into the liturgy of our lives is by helping remind us about how we enter into the presence of God in worship. There's all of these preparatory rites that are happening at the beginning, but what does it mean for us to actually walk into the presence of God? And isn't that such an amazing gift that we can do that? In the Old Testament, only the priests would be able to enter into the holy places of the temple, and only the high priest on certain days would be able to enter into the Holy of Holies. But we, all of us, are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, and we can all enter into the presence of God, which is so cool. And we can do this daily through prayer, and we do this every week as we gather for worship. Well, I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that this helps you to live out the liturgy more in your daily lives. I'll see you next week.